another story we're looking at this morning, some extraordinary scenes in Exeter yesterday. If you were watching breakfast yesterday morning, you'll have seen the whole build-up to it, but a controlled detonation took place later in the day of a Second World War bomb. Have a look at this.
More than 2,500 households and University of Exeter halls of residence were evacuated after that device was discovered on Friday. So, how many of these bombs are still around and how do they go undetected for so long? Let's speak to Mike Sainsbury now, whose company deals in unexploded bombs. Morning to you, Mike. You've encountered devices like this before. Is it actually fairly unusual to detonate a device of this size in place?
Morning, Sally. Yes, it is a little bit unusual in this instance, but it is an unusually large bomb. I think the last time one of these was found was about 5 years ago, and that was the first one for about 30 years. They're typically a bit smaller, and typically you would remove them and detonate them somewhere safer.
Now, I think we're just seeing pictures now of the crater that it left. In fact, that is the bomb that we're seeing a picture of there. What do you know about these particular bombs, and why would it have been exactly where it was?
Well, this is due to a set of air raids in the Second World War, which were not aiming at strategic targets, but cultural cities. Basically, they were retaliation raids for the effectiveness of the Royal Air Force, actually, in Germany. The Germans just targeted cities to demoralise us, and that's where these sort of bombs come from.
How much of a risk are they for us now, in our time now? How many more of them might still be around?
Well, we find, quite large bombs quite routinely. If left alone and just left in the ground, then they're very, very low risk. It's only when they're discovered during construction that you need to obviously be very careful in that first discovery.
Now, this has caused a fair old bit of trouble for people living in the area. We talked, didn't we, just a moment ago, about 2,500 households being moved away for the days while they were working on this bomb. What are the procedures when something like this is found?
Well, the first thing is to put an evacuation zone in. It's typically a lot larger to start with, just for safety purposes. And then as they find out more about the bomb, its size, how hazardous it is, then that evacuation zone can be brought in smaller. So I gather here it's about 400 metres, which is about standard for a bomb of this size.
And when you go in and you work on a device like this, what are your main concerns when looking at the area that this is in?
Well, it's mainly buildings and people. Although buildings do act as a good blast shield for when you're actually detonating the item, obviously you're looking not to damage them. So you want to make sure there's nothing sort of vulnerable in the area, evacuate people from that, and try and just reduce damage to any property or harm to people.
And in this situation, is the ideal scenario to be able to move the bomb itself before detonation? And how do you go about doing that?
Yes, I know in this instance it's very rare that you can do that, but typically you would defuse the bomb, so effectively that makes it safe, and then you remove the bomb and find a nice area that's nice and safe, maybe an old quarry or some distance away from any populations, and then detonate it. In this case, I think the contents of these larger, what they call Herman bombs, make it very, very much more difficult to move it. They're a little bit more sensitive.
And in general, how are devices like this found? I'm just thinking, everybody's out walking a lot at the moment, perhaps walking their dog. Is this, generally found by a member of the public who wonders what on earth it might be?
No, it's we as a business may go looking for them, but generally it's construction may just come across them when they're excavating, because most are fairly deeply buried. So it's very unlikely that a member of the public is just going to trip over one on their dog walk.
Mike, it's lovely to talk to you this morning. Thank you for all of that, for making us feel very safe as we go about our fresh air walks today. That's Mike Sainsbury talking to us about safe bomb disposal after that device was found over the weekend.